welcome to Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. Today I have my guest, Fred Barnstein, and I am excited to share his journey with you. Fred is the founder and CEO of 401k TV and TRAU University. He has agreed to share with me some of the key points, the highlights of his life that brought him to this point. I know Fred because we both have a spiritual practice, which we will share with you at a later point in the video. But for now, let me tell you a little bit about Fred. He is married. He's been married for 32 years and has two beautiful daughters. He's lived in Boston, in New York, and San Francisco. Currently, we are in Jupiter, Florida, where he also shares a home with his wife. And he has exceeded expectations in the financial world as an entrepreneur, and he also has been advising financial advisors for over 2 decades. What I'd like to do is engage Fred at this time so he can tell you directly how this all began for him. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Thank you for joining me today.
Sure, thanks for asking.
Yes, and as I shared with you, this is the first show, so I've set the bar very high for you.
I think you're more nervous than I am.
And those of you watching, that is a possible thing for Sendra to be, as much as I love to talk, but this is the first of many episodes. So I hope that we will inspire you with this conversation. So Fred, tell me a little bit about your professional journey and how you have achieved so much in the financial industry.
Well, I don't know how much I've achieved, but I've been in the financial services business for 23 years as an entrepreneur. And we've been lucky enough to be in the 401k business, the retirement business, and that's been a booming business on that. And, you know, our goal is our company, and we have about 25 people in our company, is to help people. And we do it through education and training, online, in person, and through videos just like this. On that. And I think that we connected and we've been successful because the people that we're working with, advisors, money managers, record keepers, HR and finance people generally know we really are trying to help, and it's really about them. And I think that when people feel that, they open up to you and they're more willing to work with you.
Well, that's wonderful. One thing that I did forget to mention is that he also holds a JD. He's also an attorney. And I want to know, how did you know that finance was your path to follow and not the law?
So after I got my law degree, and I really didn't want to be a lawyer, but I got into law school and I thought, okay, I have nothing else to do, so let me do that and see what happens. I was lucky enough to get into legal publishing. So I wrote books and databases and newsletters for lawyers. And at the end of my legal publishing career, I was recruited to go to Silicon Valley, and I did a very successful startup. And I was frankly sick of dealing with lawyers, and I was looking for a new path. And I came across 401k. I thought that was going to be important, and that was in 1996. And I was very fortunate, very, very lucky to do that. And I just really liked the financial services industry, but I particularly liked 401k because it really, if you can help people to have financial security and be on the path to retirement, you're giving them a lot of freedom.
Absolutely. You're definitely empowering many people. You're not just empowering the community at large, but you're empowering the people who are serving those communities. And I think that's a great service to humanity. As you know, those of you who know me, I am a committed spiritual, student. So anyone that I meet on the path that has such inclinations, I'm eager to speak with them, and Fred is one of those people. And so I wanted to ask you, what was the catalyst for you to actually want to go deeper into your journey?
So I've been on a pretty serious spiritual path for 34 years, right around the time that I met my wife. And we met in New York City. But even before that, I was a hippie in the 60s and 70s and experimented with psychedelics and things like that. And I was really, though, I saw that as my first exposure, that there's something beyond this. And so I've continued that. But it was really 34 years ago when I said, you know what, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not going to do any more drugs, that it has to be all natural on that. And I think it's just, sort of this quest of, to understand and know myself, better. So I've gone through not a lot, but a number of different paths. And now the path that I'm on for the last 11 years, since 2009, is the Vipassana Meditation under the SN Goenka tradition, which is really the path that was given to us by the Buddha 2,500 years ago.
Indeed. And I just want to pause to make a full disclosure that neither one of us are Vipassana teachers. We are committed students of the Vipassana practice as instructed by SN Goenka, who was born in Burma and eventually took his practice to India when he started establishing centers around the world. Thereafter, he came to the United States to establish the first center in Massachusetts, and that was over 20 years ago. And the rest is history. These centers have sprouted all over the world. And as we prepare to establish courses in Haiti, actually, we've had a couple courses in Haiti. We're about to do a third. So this is part of our intention to continue this volition of giving, and that is taught in this practice. So we are freely giving this information, but we're not instructors of the practice. I just wanted to be clear about that. So Fred, I definitely hear that you had something unfolded. So you first gave up your desire to self-medicate or to experiment, because I think that's something that really needs to be discussed. There are people who have different lifestyles that may hinder them from actually being a practice. And of course, during the practice, I remember my first course, I had already given up certain habits. I haven't had a drink in 20 years. I don't do drugs. And everything that was asked of me during the course, I had already implemented into a lifestyle. So this is not a requirement per se when you leave the course. So for you, how easy was it for you to actually accept some of these requirements?
So like you, I was already living under the requirements. So the 5 precepts under the Vipassana meditation is no intoxicants, and I haven't had a drink or a drug for 34 years. No sexual misconduct, so I've been married 32 years. No killing, and no lying or cheating, and right livelihood to do that. So those were all things I was already doing, so it was not hard. The meditation was hard, and sitting in silence was hard, but living the precepts and incorporating, and I don't want to come across as being judgmental of people that do drink or do experiment. It was just not what I wanted to do. And as we learn in our practice, we're trying to feel the sensations and observe, the sensations that are naturally occurring in our body through the breath. And if the drugs and the alcohol probably will mute that. So it makes it harder to do it. It also, I think, as we've learned, is, and I talked to a friend of mine who did have alcohol. He said, I didn't get into trouble every time I was drinking, but every time I was in trouble, I was drinking.
Absolutely.
And so you're more likely to do and go against the other precepts when you do it, but that's just a personal choice, and I don't want to feel like that people who do that are bad. It's just that that's not part of our practice.
There is a saying that said you have to come out from among them to be separate, and that's one of the things that Vipassana teaches you or encourages you to do, because it's a process that helps you be more self-reflective. And so that awareness, how have you seen that build in the years since you've been practicing?
I've been practicing, I've gone to a course every year for the past 11 years, and I recently did, about a year and a half ago, a 20-day, which is a long course. I've been meditating 2 hours a day for over over 3 years. It's a very subtle change that happens. I think that people around me notice it more than anywhere else, but it's just, it's just being more aware. And the purpose of Vipassana is to see things, to see the truth. And the goal is, how can the subjective reality become in sync with objective truth? And I think that I see that actually not only personally, but also professionally. In my industry, I don't work for a money manager or record keeper. I'm not an advisor. I don't work for a broker dealer. I'm independent. And I've sort of positioned myself as sort of the spokesperson and to a certain extent, watching over and trying to tell the truth on what's going on, because I think that our mission in this retirement is very, very important. And if things are not going right, in my opinion, I don't know that I know the truth, but just how I do it, how I see it, I think it's my responsibility, and I actually enjoy, trying to, see what the truth really is. So I think that's really the purpose of the meditation, what I'm seeing, see reality.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that you said. And I know for me, I did my first course in 2004 in Herefordshire, England. And most people who know me know that I love to talk, which is why I'm doing this. This comes natural to me. And on my first course, I couldn't stop talking. I spoke to anyone and everyone, and I remember them telling me, shh, because it was a silent course. And I continued to seek counsel from the appointed teacher who was there conducting the course. Every day I went to the teacher and says, okay, what's next? So what's next? And of course, being a business executive, I had a little bit of control issues. I needed to know. I needed to be in charge. If they were going to plan, I was going to be the planner. But the course I learned was about surrender. Surrender from everything that I've ever known to actually accept what was coming from within. Because my human mind was conditioned to be very materialistic. When I mean materialistic, it's the only way to live was to focus on what was outside of me. So Vipassana has been teaching me to focus within. And in Vipassana, there's not necessarily a God that is somewhere in the sky that's orchestrating all of it, but there is a vibration that is, when you're in alignment with that vibration, you can have anything. It creates more harmony in life. And that, because I'm seeking to purify my mind, that vibration is becoming more and more evident. How do you, what's your thought about that, Fred?
I don't know. Was there a question there?
I guess we could deviate from the topic of vibration, which is what the main teacher talks about vibration being the vibration of love, which is all that is sometimes masked by the human conditioning. And I wanted to get your thought about that, which is what we do, because when we're very smart, you and I have 2 master's degrees, and I love academia, and I believe that sometimes it can hinder one from truly discovering what is transpiring inside of us?
I'll give you a story. About 30 years ago, I was in another practice, and somebody said something that at the time, you hear things you know are true, but you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, understanding is the booby prize of the universe.
Indeed.
And later on, I read something from Goenka, which he explained it. He said that the ultimate truth is infinite. And the human mind, the rational mind, is finite. The human mind, the rational mind, cannot grasp ultimate truth. It has to be experienced. And so, without knowing, because I may have experienced it, but it's also very personal. What we hear in Vipassana is they don't tell you should feel this or that. It's all something you should feel. I think that there is an energy versus, whatever, in the Vipassana, it's not a religion and they don't talk about God, but there's an energy. And the idea is that to purify the mind, as you say, to observe the thoughts and sensations, which at first you realize they're impersonal, impermanent, they arise and pass, but then eventually you realize that's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not who I am, then only then can you realize who you really are, which is a connection.
Mm-hmm.
They say the greatest illusion is separation,
Mm-hmm.
and you realize there is no separation. As long as I am stuck in this body, in this ego, in this mind, with all of the impurities, then I see myself as separate.
Mm-hmm.
When I can let go of that. But that has to be done personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an intellectual understanding. In Vipassana, they say there are 3 levels of understanding. The first level is somebody said it, like Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad, and because they said it and they're so wise, it must be true. The second level is intellectual understanding, which you and I have spent a long time doing. But the third, and the much more powerful and higher, is personal wisdom and having experienced that. And that's what Goenka said. The highest authority is one's own experience of the truth. So that's why for a lot of people, Goenka says it in the discourse. One of them, people will come to him and say, Goenka, this course and everything you're saying is so wonderful. Just get rid of the 1-hour meditations. Get rid of the sits. And he laughs and he said, I would, but then it doesn't work.
Right.
And so that's why we have to sit and just be quiet and let the impurities come up. Let the things, whether they're pleasurable or unpleasant, arise and pass. And it's really just a process of purification.
Absolutely. And I would say to those who are not privy to some of these Eastern ways of understanding, that we're talking about just feelings. We're talking about sensations in the body. We're talking about how the mind connects to the body. Mind over matter, that's a mainstream idea. But in Vipassana, we go deeper because we understand that every reaction is stored in the mind. And the mind is not the brain per se. So because we, in this practice, we pay attention to every little detail of the body, we tend to root out old feelings and sensations, which can come up sometimes and create some disturbances. But the teacher says to just observe and to train the mind not to react. In our line of business, which is the financial sector, Fred, I'm sure you can agree, that the majority of people in this business are very reactive. When the stock market is up, people are selling their stuff. People are selling to make their profit. But it's always, everything in this universe is about a reaction or perception. And instead of reacting, the practice is encouraging us to observe and to be wise. And sometimes that means just to do nothing. And that's the hardest things, because we are programmed to take action. And sometimes it's in the non-action that we get the most benefit. And that's what we are training ourselves to do when we sit 10-day courses, when we sit, I've sat 45 days in silence. When I know that I cannot leave, I remember sitting my 45-day in India, and I had to get, in order for me to leave, I would have to reroute my plane ticket and, go to another country. But I wanted to run, but I knew that what I was there to do, I was there to retrain my mind, because what we're dealing with is neural pathways, eventually, that as a result of a perception of a situation or someone, we end up having biochemical reactions in the body, which gives us feelings of discomfort sometimes, or pleasant sensations, which are happy feelings. But the practice teaches us not to react to the good nor the not so good. The idea is for us to control our thoughts and to control our mind. What would you say on that? How has your experience been as far as the reactive chatter mind, the monkey mind, as they call it? How have you give me an example, Fred, of something that you may have dealt with, or a difficult situation, and how you were able to deal with it using this practice?
Well, I would say that a lot of people ask me, there was one time, and being a business person, as I'm sure a lot of you are, we have lists and things to do, right? And we can't really exist without that, right? And most of the time what we're saying is, I have so much to do, I have so many things to do, my list is so long, I have so much travel. It feels overwhelming, right? But there was one time I remember I was at home, I was working from home, and I finished everything. I had no more trips, no more phone calls, no more things, no more emails, no more meetings. And my ego mind said to me, you're worthless. Mm-hmm. You have nothing to do. And that fear of having nothing to do, no more trips to take, no more meetings, no more phone calls, was much greater than the fear of being overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And I realized what I was doing was, when I would get close to being in the end, I would create things. Things that maybe weren't necessary. I would create problems and situations, because that's what the ego mind is good at. It's solving problems. In the Tao, which I read very, very often, it says, when nothing is done, nothing needs to be undone. And the practice of Vipassana is allowing the past in the reconditioning to be undone, not by me, but by Dhamma.
Can you explain what the Dhamma is?
Dhamma is the force of the universe. It's the universal law. It's the ubiquitous energy. Sometimes in religion they call it God, but in the as Buddha explained, it's just the energy of the universe. It's gravity, but it's also metaphysical laws. Like, for example, I cannot avoid injuring myself before I injure someone else. I can't harm, if I become angry at somebody, I've harmed myself first. So that there are these metaphysical laws, and this is the law, and they're there to help us. Right. It feels like they're hurting us because we don't always get what we want, or we get reactions, but what it's doing is it's really trying to guide us, to teach us. And so if I can just, through the meditation practice, allow these things to come up, not react, observe them. And what we do in Vipassana, we're developing this ability to observe and develop our ability to remain equanimous, to not react. That is my only job, to remain equanimous, not to resolve, not to figure things out, but to remain equanimous and let Dhamma do the work. And when I don't react to the old what we call sankharas, or the reactions, they go away. And then the next one comes, and the next one. And that's my only job, to do that. How does that translate into work? Obviously, I have to plan, and I do things, but what I try to do is, in business, I find that when I stop over manipulating, and when I stop, saying, okay, here's what I want to happen, and I only look for those things that I want, I miss all these opportunities and things. And it's just sitting back, and that's why I do the Vipassana, because it's not, a lot of people will say to me, well, how do you live in both worlds, right? Because
Correct.
like you, I'm what's called a serious old student. Serious old students have done a long course, and they're following the 5 precepts, and they're meditating 2 hours a day. Every day doesn't mean that you can't do Vipassana without that. But that is, how do you live in both worlds? And there is no separation. It's just one world.
I wanted to clarify because you mentioned sankharas, and I will try to give a layman's understanding of what sankhara is. For me, I've come to find that there were many reactions stored in my unconscious mind. And those were traps that would get me sometimes in difficult situations. And I realized that they were stored because the same situation would repeat itself over and over. So what psychology calls trauma can be considered somewhat of a sankhara. So a trauma is something that necessarily is a physical trauma, even though sometimes it can be physical. For instance, if you're in a car accident, you have some type of physical reaction to the car accident. If you are frightened by a burglar, that's a stored sankhara. And if you were bitten by a dog when you were 3 years old, that's a stored sankhara. At some point in life, you can't understand why you have a fear of dog. There are so many ways that the body stores information, which can only be, it can be rooted out by refocusing. Refocusing meaning quieting the mind and just observing what comes up. Because we are living in a universe that's been, in a world that is busier than it's ever been with technology. And so we're constantly being stimulated and distracted by what's going on inside of us. But by isolating ourselves, or by me, I can speak for myself, when I isolate for 10 days, I can actually observe what's been going on within myself. And as a result, I become more peaceful, more harmonious, and I definitely see changes that have happened in my life as a busy finance professional. Traveling is also a sankhara because I'm always in a hurry, and there's always a feeling of something being undone, like something is going to, a situation is going to, turn out not in such a good way for me if I don't stay busy. And so retraining the mind is an opportunity for me to remove the belief. It's, again, belief, wiring, conditioning, belief that I need to do something in order for something to be done. And there are so many other ways of each person will have a different set of sankharas. But again, our teacher says we never know if the sankhara or the belief or the wiring came from before we even were born into this lifetime. So that's another teaching of the Buddha: previous life, previous existence. Sometimes, the karma can lead one to experience something to our detriment. And it's not necessary that we understand that whether it's in this life or previous life, but the idea is today we have tools that can help us deprogram ourselves to live better life and be more balanced, and therefore be more harmonious in the universe and be more selfless in giving, which is what the Buddha taught. And other master teachers such as Jesus and Muhammad, they were all givers and not necessarily takers, because they knew that their own purpose was to give from a place of pure love.
So any other questions?
Yes, so I wanted to read, and he's a prolific, and I wanted to share that Fred is also a prolific writer. He writes on the topic of Vipassana, and one of the things that he shared with me was my last attachment was Diane. It left a while ago. Not a decision, just a realization in the search for what is real beyond anicca, which I will translate, which means this, my words, change, that we're impermanent and constantly in a state of change. There is the eternal. I would like you to expand on that.
Yeah, so I think that it's, the Buddha taught in the Four Noble Truths that the first is that there is life as we know it, as when mind and matter come in contact with each other. Suffering and misery is inevitable. I think the word translated also means dissatisfaction. Mm-hmm. It's hard, I would say impossible to avoid. The second noble truth is that the cause of the suffering and the misery is our craving and aversion, our attachments. And that the third noble truth is that the way to go beyond suffering and misery is to let go of the craving and aversion. Craving pleasant sensations, aversion to unpleasant is to let go of the attachments. And Diane is my wife, very, very close. We talk about all this. She's my business partner. We have 2 children together. And I realized, in times where I was very attached to her. I had a lot of fear of losing her. In another program, I said, all our problems are caused by self-centered fear. The fear of losing what I have or not getting what I want. And that, was there. It was, I understood it. And at some point, that left. And as I said in the writing, it wasn't, I worked on it. It was something I was trying to do. I just realized I wasn't attached. And it doesn't mean that I love her less. It actually is more. I had a friend of mine in business, very successful business person in our industry, and he very interested in, we talk about this all the time, or when we get together, which is not very often. He's very attached to his family, a very wonderful family man, devoted husband, 2 sons. And he said, does that mean I have to give that up, right? And that's what we see in the confusion with attachment. And I said to him, do you love your sons, or do you love the feeling they give you? Are you attached to that feeling? And if you really love someone, you have to let them go, let them be free. Everything I resist persists. Absolutely. Everything that I love, I have to let go, and it comes back. And I'll tell you the story of Diane, our oldest daughter, who was so independent, almost didn't need parents from the beginning. Not our second one so much, but our first one for sure. And when she was in high school, she was counting the days on when she was going to go to college, right, and be free.
What's her name?
Rebecca. So we took Rebecca to Boston, and she went to this wonderful school, and we went shopping with her, dropped her off at the dorm, moved her in, and she was all ready to go. And she's at the door of the dorm, with this look, right? This forlorn look. And Diane looked at her, and Diane was a devoted, still his mother was there, all the schools, the parent teacher, everything, picked them up at school when they were elementary every single day. She gave her a kiss, said, love you, bye, walked away, never looked back. And I looked back and my daughter's like going, oh my, and that was the best thing you could do. Right, to just let them go. And, she called us a half hour, please come back and pick me up. We're like, no. And then a day later, she was fine. So that's, what love without attachment. Absolutely. And living without attachment. In the writing that you did, it was about a month ago, and we lost our dog. It was a wonderful.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
8-year-old yellow lab. He was the happiest being I'd ever known. And it still hurts, but it's, and I started that writing to say, you know that feeling when you lose something and you're like, it was so precious.
I do.
And it's, how can I live my life with the things, the people, the situations that are so precious to me, knowing that they are someday, all great loves someday have to end. But appreciate them for what they are, living that one day, and not being sad or attached to it. So that's what I meant by that.
That's beautiful. I feel that this brings up a point. What led me to wanting to meditate and to change my life? My sister, who passed on July 4th, 1996, Karine, she was the love of my life, and then my father in 97. So those were shocks to my system. And what it does is, it propelled me. Fortunately, I had a very strong spiritual upbringing, or I say religious upbringing, because I didn't actually have spirituality then, but I had the infrastructure. There was always a church in my childhood. And so I knew there was something bigger than myself that was helping. So I had that conversation. That the pain was so great that I kept asking to be led to understand what death is. It is in my need to understand death that I actually understood life.
And Goenka talks about that. It's called the art of dying.
Yes.
And it sounds very morose, but what it is if you can learn and be comfortable with how to die, or become, he talks about when meditators die, they have a happy look on their face, because they say, I'm getting a promotion.
Indeed.
And we don't have to believe in reincarnation to meditate or to do this practice. That is not required at all. But if you can live knowing, okay, yeah, this is finite, and I am going to die, then you begin to appreciate every day. You learn how to live.
Absolutely. And, again, back to this concept of death, because I now know that there is, for me, I've chosen to understand that you leave the body, but, you go on to experience different realms. And, that's not a requirement to believe that, to come to this practice. But fortunately for me, I had a deeper loss in 2006, which was my brother, Patrick, who was also the love of my life. So these three, and then subsequently, then there was the earthquake in Haiti, many people died. So through my practice, I have come to, diminish my need for material attachment. Does that mean that I've become sort of a cold, non-emotional person? By far not. I've become more emotional, more passionate, more a lover of life. That's what it is. Because now it doesn't have to have a label for me to love someone. I can be next to anyone and know that there is a connection. It doesn't necessarily need to be my brother or my sister or my mother or my father. What is your experience as that deepening of love for all of humanity through Vipassana, through this practice, Fred? And that's the question, I guess. What is your, because you mentioned that your dog, your pet passed on. Do you feel that the practice, this loss led you deeper within?
It was, I think I had already sort of come to terms with things like that. So it was bittersweet, sad because, I loved him and I used to hug him and say, you have to live forever, because we were just so attached to him. But on the other hand, knowing that he didn't, this whole practice and all of this is, I'm a very selfish person. And, but I see, I'm doing a lot of service in this practice, and I serve on the trust of one of the local centers in Georgia. And, at the end of our tenure, which just happened, there's like, oh, so why are you on the trust? What do you get? I go, it helps my meditation. And every single person that I can talk to, everyone that I meet, whether they're a family member or not, or they're a business, if they want to know about this meditation, if they want to know about the spirituality, I will take all the time that I can to help them because it helps me.
Absolutely.
And I think what you realize, what I've realized in the more spiritual practice is there is no difference between giving and receiving.
Absolutely.
And so I think that going back to what you said, to what I said earlier, is the greatest illusion is separation. Mm-hmm. Helping someone else is really helping me. And it's all about connecting to higher power, God, or what we call Dhamma, to do that. So my only goal is how do I reach that connection as much as possible. And it's not just during the 2 hours of meditation or the 10-day or the 20. It's every day.
Every day.
Every moment, breath by breath, to do that. So so that's the connection that I feel.
That's fantastic. I'm very fortunate, very grateful to have had these experiences, and I can hear you share the same feeling about that. And another thought of Fred that I'd like to share is how to truly live as if this is my last day. No regrets, no attachment, no judgment, no looking back or ahead. Equanimous, here, now, and forever. What was going through your mind when you put those words on paper?
Let me think. It was just sort of, again, seeing that bittersweet, and people might say dog, and I know a dog is different levels of being that we're here, but we were very attached is to just and my wife said it, my wife was much closer, was closer even than I was to the dog. The dog would just follow her around. Jack would follow her around wherever she was in the house, and she would just. They would watch TV together. He loved dog movies to do it. And she just said, you have to live every day as if it's the last. And the way we appreciated Jack and the way we appreciate each other and everyone around you. Every person that we meet, whether it's on the line at Starbucks or it's a family member, there's a connection. There's there's a reason that we're there to do it. So how do we appreciate that? And I don't do this a lot. I do it as much as I possibly can, and traveling like you do. Every person on that plane, every person in that airport, there is a connection. My job is to try to make that connection, and then also to realize, sometimes we just think we're going to live forever. We're not, and that's okay. Because really, in the process, what the Buddha talks about is the goal is not to live forever and have lifetime after lifetime. The goal is to realize and not come back. Mm-hmm. That's what enlightenment is, and to not be reincarnated.
So if there's a list to sign up for not coming back, where's the list? I'll sign, because that's why I am doing as many courses. In the last year, I've done quite a few courses, and I plan on doing a 30-day soon. But for me, it's not even necessarily to have any kind of achievement other than to be able to be more peaceful, more pleasant, in my life as I am blessed with this opportunity. This is a gift. This is an opportunity to be more at one with the superconscious, or you can call it God, you can call it the Dhamma. It's a superconscious vibration, which is everywhere, except that the veil of separation gives me the impression that I am a separate entity outside of the 7 billion people out. But it's not true. We're all one, and this is why this conversation has flowed so easily. And I wanted to ask you, do you feel that this is, having found this practice, and do you consider this your legacy to humanity? Is this the most important gift you have to you?
Again, I'm a very selfish person, so what I find is I get a lot of peace, and it feels like this practice, and I've looked and, through starting, I was brought up Jewish, and I've studied Course in Miracles and the Tao and other, 12-step programs. All of them were very, very helpful and very true, so this is not like we have the, if you don't practice this, then you're not going to get it. We're not the only, but it feels really, really, it feels, we don't want to say pure, because pure means that others are not. It has integrity.
Would you say effective?
It's effective on it, and it just doesn't seem. It's very practical.
Mm-hmm.
Buddha was a scientist.
And measurable.
It's measurable, and so in terms of me personally leaving a legacy, I don't know. That I don't think of it that way. I am just trying to, run a business, family, meditate, and just sort of live as fully as I can to do it. So that's for other people to figure out.
Right.
It's not about for me to say this is the legacy I want to live. I just want to be here now.
Well, the teacher, S.N. Goenka, he was a, very high ranking in his community as a Hindu leader, and he was a businessman, and he was traveling all over the world, and he never saw himself as someone who could ever have this type of spiritual practice, because he believed in God, and this practice does not believe in God, and he makes it clear that he was probably going to just do one course, and then he just fell in love with the practice, and because it was measurable, he went for a certain condition, and his teacher told him, we're not here to heal anyone. This is a spiritual practice, so if we can't help you. So, that is, for me, very appropriate, because he was an inspiration to hear his story from being a business leader and a religious leader, to give everything away, well, not materialistically, but to change his pattern of behaving, to continue to give his life for this practice. And until his dying breath, he said that his only purpose was to serve, to make sure that he could give this, or to share this practice with its many students, just like the Buddha. And I was fortunate to come across this, and it was, in passing, that somebody told me to go do a course. So if you come across this video, then, there's no coincidence. Would you say? I mean, we wouldn't even ask you, how did you find out about Vipassana?
So what they say is if Vipassana, there's a seed inside of us, and someone will come to you. And so a friend of mine who is a yoga instructor told me about the Vipassana. When I heard about it, it's like 10 days of silence. That's crazy. And 9 months later, I was there. But when I first heard it, it didn't. So there's a seed. And hopefully, as we end this video, maybe there's a seed in with you, and really strongly encourage when you're ready to look into and see if a 10-day course, and 10 days seems like a long time, but that's the amount of time that it takes, because this practice has integrity, it has purity. No one's trying to get rich, no one's trying to get famous, including myself or Sendra. No one, it just has that this is real. So I encourage you, if it does resonate with you, to investigate it, and on your own time, maybe we'll see you at a 10-day course like I met Sendra.
Indeed, and I want to thank everyone for being a part of this experience with us today. To sign up for one of our courses, it's Dhamma, DHAMMA.org. It lists all the centers around the world, and you can begin your journey with a 10-day course wherever you are. And if you need to reach me, you can always see the information at the end of this video, my email, my contact information if you need more personal information, and also Fred, if you'd like to share, we're happy to talk to anyone who's curious about this practice. But most importantly, this is your practice. Whether you're meditating or not at the moment, you have a practice. This will get you there more deeply. So there's no judgment on our part. There are various forms of meditation, but this is what I've chosen for myself. And Fred, did you have any last words? And
yeah, I think that as Buddha and Goenka have said, you have to walk the path. You can only get one person enlightened, and that's yourself. But we have the guidance of Buddha and Goenka and the many, many dedicated Vipassana teachers, and they can make it a little bit more. I'm a businessman, efficient, do it as quickly as possible, and to learn from other people's mistakes, and learn from their successes as well. So I think that's what this course is all about. And I want to thank you for inviting me, and thank you for watching and on this video, and hope to see you at a center.
Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. I thank you for joining us today. Frankly Speaking with Sendra D. We will be uploading future videos. Stay tuned to my Facebook page and Instagram page. Thanks so much, and